Hey, Willie, just
I'm
try.
gonna be too low.
No, you don't want to look any dumber than you normally do. This is what we've been needing. This is exactly what the show's been needing. I love it.
I feel like I'm way too low.
You're not too low.
I'm way too low. I look like a little kid.
You're fine. This is a new look and it's right, okay? It feels right.
How's it going, gearheads? I'm in the shop here with Cherry Bomb behind me, and we're tackling that IHC suspension 3.5 drop kit today. Now, I already got started on it. I got the wheels and tires off, as you can see behind me. Here, let me flip the camera around here. Alright, so yeah, got the wheels and tires off, got it up in the air, got the battery disconnected, and I already got started on the rear end. I got the axle flipped above the rear springs by myself. They say use a buddy, but whatever, I got it done by myself. And we're gonna start going back together, but I gotta drop these bump stops out and cut these off the mounts on the frame here. So we're gonna get tackling that next. All right, here we're gonna take off these bump stops. Now, if you don't know, on these 22 Sierras, it's really hard to tell the head of the bolt size, but they're 10 millimeter Milwaukee Sidewinder. Oh, if I go the right way. Makes easy work of it. That's one. And we're gonna come over here and do the other side. Now we can move the rear a little bit now that we have everything loose. Just a quick crank. And they're free. Now we got to cut those plates off, those perches off. Well, these bump stop mounts that we got to cut off, IHC wants you to cut them flush right about here with the frame rail, you know, flat with the frame rail. But I want to go one step further and try to save as much of these as I can in case I have to revert this thing back to stock one day. So I'm gonna, they only seem to be welded right here along the top. And then same thing on the inside of the frame rail. Nothing in the bottom, front or rear, or on the sides. So I might be able to just grind this weld off on either side, and I might be able to save this entire bracket. And if I ever need to revert this thing back to stock, you know, I'll have this locating holes obviously where that goes. And you have a big perch here on the rear, so it's like it doesn't need to be precisely exact, but I think that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to get a grinder or a little cut whiz wheel in here and try to cut this without going into the frame. Okay, so I got this weld popped off. I don't know if you can see it kind of broke the weld a little bit with the hammer and chisel once I ground it down with a cutoff wheel. I got to do the inside yet, but I'll sand this smooth again and make this look nice. And I have this stuff, this Eastwood Heavy Rust Black stuff. It's another wax coating, so it's like exactly the same stuff they use on the frame rails of these GMCs for coating instead of paint. And yeah, once I'm done, it won't even look like it was anything there. There she go. Yeah, and there's the old bump stop mount off. So yeah, no better time to do it before and after. Here's the driver's side I haven't touched yet. And after hammering off and popping those welds, after grinding them and smooth them out on the frame rail, I still have to do the inside yet, but then once I wax coat it, you'll never see any of that. A couple spots where I dug a little deep, but it ain't gonna hurt nothing. That'll be fine. Okay, here we go. There goes the coated in wax. Alright, I did like 2 coats of the wax coating. Once it dries and then after rain hits it, it'll look like it's never even there. It's still wet yet. I literally just got done spraying a second coat. But yeah, I can never tell there's a bump stop mount there. Okay, so at this point we got all the bump stop mounts cut off, all the welds smooth, and then coated with wax. And there's 2 brackets for the brake lines as well that have to get cut off. Did that. And now I'm about to undo the leaf pack and take the center bolt out so we can add the helper bag bracket to the leaf spring here. So there we go with that. You gotta vice grip the belt head. Or you can loosen up the leaf spring. Oh, don't forget to clamp the spring as well. And when you do this, keep your clamp a little far back because that leaf spring bracket, that helper bag bracket comes right back to about here, I believe. This comes off, we don't need that. And then, okay, this goes like so. Try to squeeze everything back together. It's difficult. Maybe we need a second C-clamp. Go. Start the nut back on there and tighten her back up. Try to kind of square this up a bit. It's gonna move on you, but now. All right, that takes care of the leaf pack. I already did the other side. So now, according to the instructions, now we have the leaf pack springs together with the helper bags. We can start raising the diff and putting everything in place. So we're gonna go to time lapse. So, don't do what I did and install the leaf spring pin back the way it was originally. It didn't dawn on me now that the axle is above it. The alignment pin has to go through this saddle here, which not only fits, you know, up top. So yeah, dummy me, I gotta flip the alignment pin backwards or upside down. No mention of that in the instructions, but I guess I might have slipped them, or you know, I easily missed, whatever. So yeah, clamp the springs and we'll undo them again and flip the pin, and we'll be in the right position now, hopefully. Now the saddle sits supposed to where it's supposed to go. Position it this way a little more. We've got the other side in place. Drop this other clamp. We should be able to lower the rear and the saddle. Now, the back side has the threaded hole. This brake line back here, and then the front side has a spade. That's one of their logos. And yeah, we should be able to lower the rear into position like so. Go this way. Rush it around a bit, I think. Okay. It is sitting back on the leaf springs. Cool. So I ran into an issue here where the U-bolt was too long. So this is the longest 7/8 socket I got. So we're gonna have to cut some threads off, which I expected we were gonna have to anyway. All right, so I measured it out, and just to get the socket to reach, I'm gonna have to take like 3/4 of an inch off. So got the old Wiz wheel off, and we're gonna do some more cutting. Alright, so we got the U-bolts trimmed down. I had to take 3/4 of an inch off and got the plate snug. I'm going to go over and run the other side tight to the point where they don't reach, and I'll cut 3/4 of an inch off of them too. And then we'll torque them. I got to double check what the torque specs are, but we'll get that done. Alright, so these 4 nuts for the U-bolts are supposed to get torqued to 120 foot-pounds, so we're going to get done. Yeah. Huh? Yep. All right. All right, we're still cranking away on Cherry Bomb here, doing the rear axle. Haven't touched the front yet. That might be another day. It's already getting to 6:30. So I got the rear bag mounts on. I'm gonna put the bag on the bottom first, and then bolt up the top, and then start chaining the airlines, and then I can hook up the rest of the stuff to the axle for ABS wiring and the brake line mounts and all that. All right, let's keep cranking. Let's try this. Oh yeah, money. And that'll go, I'll back that off a little bit, and that'll go into there. Like so. Yeah, I didn't think I could do that one-handed. But yeah, we'll jack up in the rear, get those bolts started, we'll Loctite them before we run them in. And then we're gonna run airline. And I'm thinking going through here, teeing the other side in, and then running out the fuel neck door. I think that'll be good enough. All right, so I just finished hooking up all the airbags here, and I just put a little bit of air. I mounted the Schrader valve in the gas door, in the plastic, and ran the airlines down, teed it, ran one through the cross member to the other side, and ran one right here to the bag. I had one leak I found with a little bit of soapy water. Other than that, it's holding at 15 PSI, and that's what I set it at. So bags seem to be okay. We're doing good. Well, the rear end's done. I put the wheels and tires back on. I haven't even touched the front end. I think tomorrow maybe afternoon. It's Father's Day tomorrow. Maybe I can get over here to do the front end. I had it on the ground. It looks pretty good. Well, the rear end on the ground. It holds this pretty good height. I didn't measure it yet, but I will do the measurements once I finish the front end. And yeah, tomorrow's another day, and then I'll have to get it aligned somewhere. So, yeah, day one, I'm beat. Alright, so here we are, day two. I have a little bit of time today, not a whole lot, being Father's Day, going away later. I'm going to try to get this front end disassembled. So, ain't going to go do too depth of it, I might just time lapse it. We gotta do tie rods, we gotta undo upper lower wall joints, the ABS wiring, the shock mount, and both control arms are coming out. Gotta undo the brake too. So, yeah, let's get to it. Here's a funny thing that happened. I was wheeling on this upper control arm trying to get this ball joint to pop, and I went to grab another tool, and I come back and it just popped itself right on its own as I walked up to it. I gotta do the lower. Oh, and a fun fact while I'm in here, they always say to hang your brake caliper. Well, if you put a bolt back through it, there's a little hole right there in the frame. You just hang that whole brake caliper right there. No muss, no fuss. Alright, so here's the spindle and hub assembly with the brake rotor on. After a couple whacks with the lower hammer, the hammer on the lower ball joint, I got the thing to pop free. So yeah, let me set this down here. those three down there, the one on the inside towards the engine, I have to get from the top. The rest I can get from the side. So yeah, we got a long extension and a 18mm on a gun. Okay, so we have the driver's side fully disassembled here. Oh, one more thing, one more process. They have you pull these little plastic retainers, I think they are, for like the alignment. They get discarded. They have a new piece that goes on. I'll show you later. And it locks that in. But that'll be later on. I gotta clean up and get out of here this afternoon. It's Father's Day, gonna do stuff with the family. So I'll either come back to this later on, or this might be end up being a 3-day thing. So, alrighty. Alright, so day 3 here. Well, technically 2.5 because I only spent a half day on the front end here, disassembly, because yesterday was Father's Day. So we're gonna get back to assembling the front end here with all the new parts. IHC suspension wanted us to pre-grease the sidewalls here of the shock tower for the upper control arm and inside the lower control arm mounts, just to keep avoidance from noise. And they also wanted you to flare out the lower control arm mounts. An 1/8 inch rubber mount does the trick on both sides. So we're going to set up the GoPro here and do a time lapse of assembly on the front end here. remove these plastic retainers, and IHC has these locks, and they want it in the middle for ease of alignment. They say on the middle hole, just like there. So it's in the neutral spot for the computer. And now you can put your nuts on, and don't tighten the lower control arm just yet. Alright, before we place these upper ball joints or upper control arms in, we're going to torque these ball joint bolts down to 18 foot-pounds per the instructions, and then we'll go ahead and mount the upper control arms back on the truck. Upper control arm bolts, they want these tightened up and torqued to 110 foot-pounds, so we're going to run those tight and torque them. Alright, next thing on the list is putting our factory strut assembly back in. We're going to hang it from the top 3 bolts first, and then we're going to bring up the lower control arm and bolt that in. But there is something I want to show you before we attach the bottom of that first. Now, IHC wants you to tighten the upper 3 bolts on the strut assembly first, the 35 foot-pounds. Before we go and do that, I want to explain something. They give these little spacers here to go on the lower control arm. Now, I'm assuming that's because of the 3-inch drop. IHC suspension also offers a 4-inch drop for these trucks, and I believe that's what the spacer makes up the difference. I can't imagine they're making different control arms for a 1-inch drop. So we're going to throw this in and start the bolts. Well, we're going to start the bolts in the bottom of the strut assembly through the lower control arm. Put this in place. We're going to run the bottom bolts tight first because these upper holes are slotted. So I don't want the shock to be in the wrong position and have bind in the bushing. So we're gonna run these up through and tight first. Bring this up. One bolt. Now it's a spring clip in the bottom of the shock, so it's kind of nice to get a little bit of play. Once you have those start, you take this slotted holes and you just slide it in from the back. And then I'm going to take my impact driver with a 15 here and run that tight while holding the spacer. Get one. And now we can go and tighten those upper bolts on the shock. Alright, so I have the driver's side upper strut assembly tight, the passenger side 2 outer ones on the up top I have tight, but I gotta lower the truck down and get the one on the inside through the engine bay. It's easier to get at with a long extension and a 18mm socket. So we're gonna lower this down here. Okay, so right down there is that a 18mm bolt, nut rather. So we're gonna take a long extension and actually double up extensions and use an impact driver to run it tight. I might go a little further and crank on it with a ratchet, but yeah, that's an easy way to get to that one. All right, so it's after 8 o'clock on day 2.5. I'm gonna call it. We have to finish the rest tomorrow on official day 3, probably after work. It's because it's like after 8 here on Monday afternoon. We have the lower control arm in, bolted loosely. We got torque dials down yet. The upper ball joint, the upper control arm's in. That's actually torqued. The entire strut assembly's in on both sides as well. Tomorrow we'll hang the spindle on both sides, connect all the ABS wiring, and we'll put the axle through as well and tighten that nut down. Then hang the brakes, do the tie rod ends, and do the sway bar links as well. We gotta mount those up. I have that sitting there on the floor. Sorry, yeah, right there. We gotta mount that all up. Yeah, tomorrow's another day, I think, and we should be done. I gotta grease everything too. All those grease certs gotta get greased. So yeah, tomorrow's another day. Okay, so we're back in the shop here with Cherry Bomb. We're gonna try to finish this front end on this thing. Where we left off, we just put the struts in, and the next thing we had to do, they want us to do, is to torque the lower control arms. But before I go and do that, I think I'm gonna grease all the control arm fittings first. And then after we torque the control arms, well, before we torque the control arms, we gotta put weight on the lower control arms. That way it's sitting with some sort of pressure on the suspension. That way we don't get bind up in the bushings. Torque the lower control arms, and then we're gonna hang the spindles. And after that, actually, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do the sway bar and sway bar links before the spindles. So let's get started with that. Alright, so now we have the upper control arm and lower control arm bushings greased. We're going to lower the truck down. I have a couple jack stands on the floor here, and we're going to let the truck sit on the front suspension on the lower control arms and hold itself up before we torque the lower control arm bolts. Now we have the truck on the lower control arms with the weight on it off the lift and on the jack stands. We're going to torque these lower bolts, all 4 of them, to 150 foot-pounds, but I'm going to run them tight with a ratchet first. Just because there's really no really good spot to get a gun in there. You could probably get a gun in the front, but the rear is impossible. So I'm just going to hand tighten them and torque them down with the torque wrench to 150 foot-pounds. They want you to try not to move the head of the bolt because that'll move the cam. And if you do that while you're torquing it, you might ruin the alignment pin on the back, well, on the inboard sides of the control arm. So yeah, do whatever you can to not turn that wrench while you're trying to torque that down. It may seem impossible, but you got to try to do it. So now that we have all 4 lower control arm mount bolts tight and torqued down to 150 foot-pounds, we can raise the truck back up and put in the sway bar, and we can maybe start hanging the spindles. Sway bar bolts to the frame, I believe, are 35 foot-pounds, which isn't even really worth torquing. And then the sway bar link bolts are 45 foot-pounds, which I will torque those because they're just a moving joint per se. So yeah, let's get this thing back up in the air, get underneath it, and we'll start hanging that sway bar. Alright, so now we're going to hang the spindle and hub assembly, but before we do, IHC wants us to put this little sleeve in the lower ball joint hole for the spindle. Because it's a different ball joint type, I believe it's just to take up the space, but it is a cone shape, so it will fit correctly into the lower part of the lower spindle there for the ball joint. So we're going to insert that, and I'm going to insert the axle. I did a little preventative maintenance for future, and put a little never sees on the splines of the axle shaft. Sometimes they get rusty and it's a pain in the ass to get out. So just a little bit of preventative maintenance in the future. If I ever have to pull this apart and take the axle out, it's a little easier that way. So yeah, we're gonna get both the spindles on, and then we'll start routing the ABS wires and hanging brakes, and then hooking up the tie rods. Okay, let me just say, getting this lower ball joint started and this axle nut started and lined up to get the axle in and get it over the ball joint, that was a pain in the butt. But I got them started, but my problem is I have the grease strip there and I can't bring the axle in any further until I get the lower ball joint tight. So we got to draw that up with a ratchet or something, or an impact gun, before we bring the axle in. I don't want to break off either the grease cert in the lower ball joint or damage that shield that's around the CV axle going into the hub. So yeah, I'm going to wrench up on the lower ball joint before I draw this axle in, and then we have to somehow get this to line up. Okay, after looking at the instructions more, after we get this lower ball joint snug, it says we can tighten the axle nut right away, and I think that's to avoid hitting that grease cert. So it's a 36mm nut. I'm going to untighten my impact driver here. Now it's supposed to get torqued to 160 foot-pounds. Okay, so I got the upper ball joint in position and the nut started with a little bit of muscle and a dead blow hammer, and I was able to get it started without using a jack on the ground. And I double checked the steering, and the lower grease fitting started touching the dust shield a little bit, so I just turned it a little bit in. It's like very slightly in towards the truck and forward, and the other side probably be opposite. You just want to make sure it clears on that dust shield. Steer the knuckle back, left and right. But yeah, make sure everything rolls as steers as it goes. Now earlier when I mentioned that grease serting in that lower ball joint, check this out. You got to have this oriented in just, focus the right way, otherwise it hits that axle. I'm going to have to wipe a little bit of that rust from the axle off, but if you have it facing in, it is not in the right orientation. You have to have it facing forward or back, otherwise it'll hit that axle. It is going to be tight in there to grease that, but that's the way it's going to have to be. Oh, now it's out of focus. There we go. Yeah. So that's how it's going to be. It's got to be forward or back. Lower ball joint gets torqued to 120 foot-pounds. The upper ball joint, which gets a cotter pin, by the way, gets up to 65 foot-pounds. 65 foot-pounds. Brake caliper gets put on, back on, and that gets torqued to 100 foot-pounds, those two bolts. And then the front tie rod gets put on. Yeah, they didn't list that in the instructions. Yeah, then we're gonna attach the tie rod. It didn't say how much torque that gets in. And mount the brakes and run the ABS wiring. And then repeat the other on the other side. So I'm just gonna time lapse the rest, and we'll see what she looks like on the ground once I get the wheel on. So here we go. It's 11:30 here, and I got her all buttoned up, and I gotta say, Cherry Bomb's new stance I think looks pretty sweet. Now I definitely know I need to get an alignment. I can kind of tell it's already cambered, not cambered out, but cambered positive, so it's actually high out in the top. But actually on the ground it don't look too bad. I'm running 15 pounds in the helper bags right now. I want to see how that rides. I might drop it to 10. I might leave it where it's at. We'll see. But yeah, all in all, I'm tired. I'm beat. I need a beer and I need to go to bed. But next I gotta get her aligned, and we'll be good to go. So yeah, IHC suspension, nice kit. A little tricky on the install on some things, but yeah, not bad. And I like the way it freaking looks. I'll get some pictures out. All right, later.